It's time for a new edition of Phillies Talk Podcast with Rich Baxter and Matt Veazey, the longest-running independent podcast talking about the Philadelphia Phillies baseball. On this edition, we talk about the start-off for 2023, our predictions for the Phillies, and what they need to be successful in going forward. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Phillies Talk Podcast for April 12th, 2023, and the season is underway for baseball and the Phillies, and I couldn't be happier. I'm joined with my co-host and good friend, Mr. Matt Veazey. How are you, Matt?
Awesome, Rich. How about yourself?
Not bad today. Forecast is for about 80 degrees across the Philadelphia area, South Jersey, Delaware, all places in between. And we have some afternoon baseball as of the time we're recording this podcast. As of the time our listeners listen to this, it'll probably be over, of course. But we've seen a little bit of a mixed bag from the Phillies so far in the first, 11 games, 4-7 record. Sort of 6-1, half a dozen of another with the Phillies so far.
They can't really get on a roll, Rich. And the biggest factor in that so far has actually been a couple of the guys that we would think that they could count on, meaning starting pitchers Aaron Nola and Zach Wheeler, the two aces of the team, really haven't gotten it rolling yet. And if they had gotten better efforts from those two guys, they probably have a winning record right now. So the offense, it's been okay for the most part. They really manhandled defending National League Cy Young Award winner from the Florida Marlins the other night. Florida Marlins, showing my age, the Miami Marlins the other night with a fantastic effort. But it's the pitching, the starting pitching, and occasionally the relievers just hasn't been what we expected, I think, so far.
Yeah, it's been a sputter start to the season so far, 2023. I don't think a lot of people expected the Phillies to come out and be world beaters, and yeah, they weren't world beaters. They started the season off 0-4 right out of the gate, so that telling you right off the bat made a lot of people nervous. There was a lot of rumblings. Oh, Rob Thompson's at fault. This one's at fault. As you said, starting pitching hasn't been reliable, and we even saw that last night with Aaron Nola getting another start. And he was just hanging some breaking balls up there basically a few times, and the Marlins made him pay for that. And Phillies offense just couldn't get started. For some reason, I think we're seeing Aaron Nola pick up where Cole Hamels used to be years ago, where the Phillies, when they are behind certain pitchers, they just can't seem to hit. And I think Nola has gotten that new job, so to speak, somehow.
Well, Nola didn't help himself, and he really hasn't yet so far this year in his starts. He got off to a good start, like is pretty typical. First time through the lineup, he does pretty well for the most part, but he came unglued, there, and was like the fourth inning or fifth inning, and they need better from him. He needs to be able to go out there and give them a quality start. I mean, that's who Aaron Nola is. Aaron Nola is coming into this season. Aaron Nola has consistently been one of the top 20, 25 starting pitchers in all of baseball. Not necessarily always one of maybe the top 5 guys, but if you go down the list, he's always consistently been in that top tier of starting pitchers in Major League Baseball. And Phillies had to count on that coming into the season. You would figure with him being in a contract year, he's looking to have a big free agent deal, whether it's from the Phillies or some other team. And you would expect, that would get you to bear down more and bring out your best effort. And it often does with players, but it hasn't manifested so far with Nola. But, beating a dead horse there. He hasn't had a good start. Let's hope he picks it up. Let's hope it's nothing physical, something they can work with on him and get him squared away. The club's 4-7 right now. As you mentioned, they started out 0-4. So they're 4-3 since then. They haven't lost consecutive games since that 0-4 start. So that's something to build on, but you're You don't want to be dwelling, piddling around for too long below 500. The Braves are already off to an 8-4 start, and they have a good ball club. You don't want to get too far behind them. The Mets, I think, they're struggling a little bit, but they're still at 500. And they had some injury problems of their own, and maybe not as big as the Phillies, losing guys like Hoskins and Harper, but still, I think the Mets, got to be pretty happy with being at 500 right now with the few injury problems that they've had. And if you look around the rest of the National League, Milwaukee's off 8-3. The Cardinals are off to just as bad a start as the Phillies at 4-7. They were expected to contend. The Dodgers are only playing 500 ball. The Padres, even, they're expected to be a big ball club this year. They still may be. Played the Phillies in the NL Championship last year, but they're 7-5. So nobody's really, other than the Milwaukee, who's off to that great 8-3 start. Pittsburgh 7-4. There's just no way that team is going. That's a quick start. There's no way that team's going to keep up that pace. The Cubs at 6-4. They were one of my surprise picks coming into the season. If you go back to mattbeasy.com and look at my preseason predictions that I just put out a couple of weeks ago, the Cubs were my pick to be a surprise team this year, and they're off to a nice 6-4 start there in the Central. Mm-hmm. But really, the big thing if I'm the Phillies is I'm watching the Braves, and Atlanta's off to that 8-4 start. They've got Ronald Acuna back this year. They've got some pitching problems, but if they can square those away a little bit, they're going to be really dangerous all year, given health. So the Phillies already behind the 8 ball because of some health issues. Now especially their top starting pitchers haven't come through. They really got to start getting that squared away. They got to start getting the pitching squared away, Rich, if they want to go on a run and really establish themselves early on here as the contender that we all believe they are.
That's for sure. And to just back up a little bit, we didn't get a chance to give our Phillies predictions for the season. Our schedules precluded it. So why don't we give a minute or two to that before we go on talking about the start of the season. We'll give ourselves the benefit of an extra, 8-10 days since the season started here, maybe even 12 days or so. 4-7 as we're doing this podcast, as we just said. But let's roll through what we think the Phillies will do for 2023, up into including even making the playoffs or perhaps a return to the World Series. I'll let you take it first. I know you had that wonderful post on mattveasy.com, and you can also follow Matt at his Twitter feed, at Phillies Bell, and as much as if you would like to follow mine, of course, at Fightin' Phillies without the G. So, Matt, why don't you go ahead with your 2023 Phillies prediction? We got the little benefit of 12 days into the future.
Sure. Well, it's actually the last piece that I've written. I haven't been writing a lot this year so far at my website. I'm going to pick that pace up a little bit. But it was back on March 26th, before the season got rolling, that I did my Phillies and Major League preview section. And I picked the Phillies to come in third place in the National League East behind Atlanta and New York, which is the top two teams right now. In fact, just 2 weeks into the season. So I picked the Phillies for third, which is where they finished last year, and I predicted that they would become one of the wild card teams. I actually have them as the second wild card team. If you want my predictions for each of the divisions, for each of the playoff races, you can go to mattveasy.com and pull up that last article from March 26th, and you can see all of my predictions for the Phillies, for the rest of the divisions in baseball. I do have the Phillies going far again in the postseason. You can see just how far if you want to take a look at that article. Cool. But yeah, I had them for third place. Until the Bryce Harper returns, I saw some the problem. We knew at the time that Reese was injured, so it looked like Derek Hall was going to be the first baseman for the most part. He was certainly going to play against all the right-handers, which is probably, three quarters of the starts. And there's another unfortunate injury, Rich.
Yep.
Hall's shown a lot of power between the minor leagues and the big leagues. And, I really thought that at least on the field, the Phillies weren't going to lose a lot with Hoskins being out. But now Hall's out himself for a couple of months. So, another blow there for the Phillies lineup. So, it's going to be interesting to see how they manage, how Thompson manages the lineup through that. But it's going to be a struggle because of the injuries to even, especially if they don't get that start and pitching, to even maintain that third place that I predicted.
That's awesome. Nice predictions there. And I'll spell it out for anybody that hasn't been to your website, MattVeasey.com. It's mattveasey.com. You can check out his baseball writings there, all on the Phillies predictions as well, as you just mentioned. And I'll just roll through mine from the top of my head for the Phillies. I kind of see them, I predicted, believe it or not, the Phillies to go back to the World Series on my other podcast I do with Gary Mack called Baseball Talk Radio Show, the Baseball Talk Radio Show, if you want to check it out on any podcast format. I think the Phillies are going to get it together. I thought that they were going to do very well this season, possibly even winning the division. I know that's pie in the sky thought right now. I think I still favor the Mets to win the division just solely based on their starting pitching. If that becomes healthy with Scherzer and, et al., all of the others. But they have Cody Senga now that fired a nice first game for them at home the other day.
Verlander, he'll be back soon.
Yeah, Verlander. Those two, Verlander and Scherzer, they're in the same group. They're going to be, if they make it the whole season, it's going to be amazing. And if they do, the Mets are going to really, really go far in this division. If they end up hurt most of the year, then, of course, it's going to be a different story. But if they can keep healthy, I think it may be the Mets division this year. I see them taking it almost, with the Phillies coming in a close second. The Braves, I feel they're going to falter again. I could be wrong. I see them at third with a finish. I see the Phillies being at least a wild card again, with equaling maybe 89, 90 victories this year. And that's going to be a tall task, as you said, just upon their start of the season. Their starting pitching looking a little suspect to start off the year. Zach Wheeler pitching this afternoon as we're doing the podcast. And as you said, Aaron Nola, he's 0-2 with a 7.04 ERA after last night's loss to the Marlins. And that's not Aaron Nola. That's not the Aaron Nola that we know, but it's Aaron Nola for 2023, unfortunately. And as you said, he's going for the contract year, quote unquote. It's pretty humorous on Twitter when people, he's pitching and, there goes his $200 million contract. It's now $150 million. They were tweeting last night. It's a little humorous. He's going to get paid. Don't worry about it. There's only but so many aces to go around in the MLB. He's one of them. I think he's assured a payday from somebody, if not the Phillies, next year. It'll be somebody, guaranteed. Now, if he has a total bomb year, that could change. If he keeps pitching the way he is and ends up 4-12 or something at the All-Star break, who knows what's going to happen with Aaron Nola for 2024 and beyond. But I think he's going to find it. The Phillies are going to get this offense churning. We've seen little bits and pieces of it already this year. They've sort of teased us a little bit. They've been terrible at times, running the bases like little leaguers, as John Kruk blurted out the other night, out by a mile, running through stop signs, things like that. But if this offense can get churning, we've seen what they're capable of against Alcantara with that 15-3 victory. they've got a juggernaut waiting to explode. And if they can just get it together and even that out and bring up that starting pitching, I think we can see a lot of series wins this year. Maybe not domination, but the Phillies staying in the race, getting some respect. You know, that a lot of the fans jumped off board right away, including WIP. They were very tough on Rob Thompson. You know, to the point where I couldn't even listen to the radio. I had to turn it off. I mean, it's just like, come on, give me a break. There was 4 games into the season, and they were ready to jump off the Ben Franklin Bridge, for God's sakes. You know, it's a long season. It's a fast season with the new time clock, but don't lose faith in the Phillies yet is my word.
I don't pay much attention to sports talk radio, Rich. In fact, I don't pay any attention to it. I don't listen to sports talk radio. There's a lot of negative on either they're being negative or they're talking about the Eagles. So I don't really have a lot of time a day for Philadelphia sports talk radio. It's not worth my time. But I think that you have it right. That I think a big thing with the Phillies is staying in the race. You know, they, like I said, they'll get Hall back at some point. We know they're going to get Bryce back at some point. They're already working on modifying his sliding, and supposedly that's the big thing that they're concerned with. He's already hitting off of full speed pitching, so it's looking more and more like Bryce has a great chance now to be back. Maybe around, I'm talking about Memorial Day now. That's a whole different story than the All-Star break. You know what I'm saying? So even if it's like, say, around June 1st, that's 6 weeks sooner than the All-Star break. So if they can get Bryce back and for 2/3 of this season, that's fantastic news for the Phillies. Even if he is only the DH for the entirety of the 2023 season, we saw what he can do with a bat in his hand last year as the DH. So this lineup is a lot longer when it has guys like Derek Hall and Bryce Harper in it. So especially against right-handers, I mean, those two guys would help the club become a wrecking crew against right-handers. Right now, they have gotten good starts from actually a phenomenal start from Alec Bohm, who's playing like an all-star to this point. He's filling in admirably at first base, about half the nights it seems now, and they're letting Edmundo Sosa play a lot of third base. It looks like Thompson's going to use that alignment at least against left-handed pitching and possibly against some right-handers as well. Bohm's also played a nice third base, you know, when he plays his natural position. They've gotten a fantastic start out of Bryson Stott. So Bohm and Stott, 2 homegrown products who they really, coming into the season, they were looking at, hey, if these 2 guys can step up, this lineup can really explode. Well, they have stepped up to this point. They've not only stepped up, they've been the 2 best, most consistent offensive producers so far for the Phillies in the first couple of weeks. And then another guy that everybody said has to step up if this team wants to reach its, you know, really full potential and possibly contend for a division crown, Nick Castellanos. And Castellanos has stepped up, maybe behind just Bohm and Stott. He's been the next most productive hitter. Nick, he's had some ups and downs, but for the most part, he has produced so far. He's hitting 300 so far. Mm-hmm. He's got an 879 OPS. If he did that over the course of a full season, you have to be happy. The only thing right now with Castellanos is he hasn't left the yard yet. No home runs, but he does. I believe he's leading the National League, maybe all of baseball, with 7 doubles. Yeah. Trey Turner, he's done well so far. He's hitting 313, but I think we can expect a lot more out of Turner. He's stolen 2 bases. I think you're going to see that number explode at some point, Rich. I don't know if he's still getting his feel for the new rules or the team, the ballpark. Maybe it's just been the situation so far, but Turner himself has not gone yard, and he's going to hit, 20 plus homers over the course of the season, maybe approaching 25, 30 homers. So we know he's going to pick up that pace at some point. And the steals, a steal a week average for Trey Turner, he's going to be more like a 2 to 3 steal per week guy by the time it's all over. So I think even though he's hitting .313 so far, he's second on the team with 15 hits behind only Stott. But the best is still yet to come from Trey Turner. Kyle Schwarber has got 3 homers. He's tied with Bohm for the team lead, but that's really all they've gotten out of Schwarber so far is the 3 homers. He had a couple doubles too, but he's only hitting 200 and his OPS is only 694. They really need to start getting more consistent production out of Kyle Schwarber. JT Realmuto hasn't started hitting yet. He had a fantastic spring, and especially down there in the World Baseball Classic playing for Team USA, but he's only hitting 222 so far in the season. So Schwarber and Realmuto can certainly be a little more consistent. We're going to get more out of Turner. So I think once they start going, if Bohm, Stott, Castellanos can keep up what they've been doing, this lineup has a lot to offer. And I think that they have another gear that they can go to, another level that they can go to offensively. It's really going to come down for me, Rich, to that pitching. They have to get the pitching squared away.
Yep, and as you said, Schwarber's had that slow start. He had a slow start last year, even though we remember being at opening day when he hit that opening day home run. I think he was first up at bat. That was a phenomenal way to start 2022. I knew at that point something special for the Phillies was in store just from that. But yeah, it was an exciting open to that. We both actually attended 2023 opening day, and that was awesome as well. We've seen some base running gaffes by Schwarber already. Hopefully that will, eliminate. And one guy that I saw in person that, I had initially ragged him on in my Twitter feed and maybe even in my blog at fightingphillies.com was Gregory Soto. I was down on him, but seeing him in person at Yankee Stadium about a week ago or so, I was impressed with him so much that I'm in his corner now. He can do no wrong, basically, unless he blows a few games, of course, down the road. But he's such a phenomenal pitcher. He didn't even use warm-up time in New York when they put him on the mound. He had 30 seconds left to warm up, and he was just like, I'm ready to go, let's do this. And he was throwing darts to home plate at 100 miles an hour right down the center, like hit me if you can, going right after hitters. He's a phenomenal, exciting type of pitcher. He's one of those closers that I think down the road we may see him close for the Phillies, even though they have, quote-unquote, 4 guys that can do it at this time. Soto might be your man as far as, that fireball pitcher, the guy that's going to come in and not be afraid to go after anybody either. He goes right at him, and he's an exciting, sort of like a Billy Wagner from what I remember from years ago. He just has a ton of fire and just comes right at you. So I'm looking forward to see him later in the season, and as the season goes on. A little reveal for our listeners. I had teased a little bit about what jersey I was going to buy this year, and I ended up buying number 8. As you said, Castellanos had a good start to this year. He's been a doubles hitting machine. So that's the jersey that I ended up with. So you see me around the ballpark in a number 8 authentic jersey from the Phillies, you might be me. So that was my jersey purchase of the year. Probably my only one at that price, for sure. But, yeah, I'm hoping that Castellanos has a great year. I think he will, and he's off to a great start.
Yeah, back to the pitching, Rich. You mentioned Soto, and you look at his numbers, and it's typical of the Phillies bullpen. If you look down all their numbers, it doesn't look good right now. He's got an 8.31 ERA after 6 games. He's allowed 5 runs, 4 of them earned in 4 1/3 innings. His WHIP is on 1.85. So the numbers
don't tell you that in the press notes. I'm looking at the press notes. He looks like
let me finish up, Rich.
Don Drysdale.
I'm not done, Rich.
Okay.
Let me finish up.
Okay.
But as I said, those are the raw numbers, the way they look if you look at the numbers. The but his batting average against is only 188, which is phenomenal. He has 3 straight scoreless outings, and 4 of his last 5 outings have been scoreless. His blow up came in his first appearance. Back on March 30th at Texas, he allowed 3 earned runs, didn't get out of the inning that he pitched, a couple of hits. He really got whacked around in that first appearance with the Phillies. And then in one of the games at Yankee Stadium, he allowed a home run, but he struck out 3 guys, but he also walked 2 and allowed a home run. But those are his 2 blips. Like I said, in 3 straight games, he's now been scoreless and 4 of 5. So he has actually started, as you mentioned, he started to look really good. That 188 batting average against is phenomenal. So I think you can eliminate, and you can never, obviously, I'm sure pitchers would love to say, if I could just take with 1 or 2 games out of my record, my numbers would look a lot better. Of course, you can't do that. Yeah. But as long as we don't get too many of those blow-ups, Rich, like he had in his first outing, he looks pretty good, actually, in his last, and like I said, in 4 of his last 5 outings. The other guys, Bellotti and Brogdon, their ERAs both north of 4. Their WHIPs are both over 1.4. Sir Anthony got blown up in his last outing. He has not looked good at all. His WHIP is 2.75 after his first 5 games. His ERA is over 15. Kimbrel's ERA is over 10 after 5 games with a 2.54 WHIP. That is unacceptable, Rich. Bellotti, Brogdon, Sir Anthony, Kimbrel, those are 4 key relievers for the Phillies. And those guys have to lock it down a little bit better. They've gotten phenomenal work out of Jose Alvarado, who has really, since last June, has been one of the best relievers in baseball. I think he struck out like the last 10 or 11 batters that he's faced overall. He's got 11 strikeouts and no walks this season. He's been lights out so far. They don't need everybody. I mean, it'd be nice if everybody was good as Alvarado, but the youngster Andrew Vasquez has pitched well for them. He's given up some hits, but he hasn't been hurt. So I think that a real key, Rich, is the pitchers that they're counting on, aside from Alvarado. They've gotten great work, as we've seen from Matt Strahm and Bailey Falter out of the starting rotation. But those were the question marks, right? Those are their 4th and 5th starters. The Phillies, the whole key to the Phillies right now, their offense has been okay, a little inconsistent. They've gotten great work from the guys I mentioned, Alvarado, Strahm, Falter. But the starting pitching of Nola, Wheeler, and Taijuan Walker must get better. The bullpen work from Brogdon, Sir Anthony, Kimbrel, Bellotti has to get a lot better. Sir Anthony, if those pitchers pick it up to, even if they just come to their career norms, Rich, the Phillies are going to take off. They're going to go on a winning streak at some point.
Yes, they will. And just to round out the podcast while we're doing it here on a Wednesday afternoon, getaway day for the Phillies. Hey, if you didn't catch any of the Cincinnati series, you got plenty of time to do it the next 4 days, because the Phillies go out to Cincinnati for 4 games. So in the first 2 weeks of the season, we're going to play the Cincinnati Reds 7 times. Woohoo! Isn't that so fun? So we'll
and that'll be it, Rich. I mean, you see each team now once each, I believe, home and away, and or I think it's the American League teams you see once, National League teams you see home and away. They'll be done with the Reds, after this weekend.
7 games between the two. But on this current homestand, some great numbers to talk about. We'll bring that up from the Phillies notes, the press notes here. And they don't put bad things in the press notes usually, but let's read some of the good stuff. Homestand for Alec Boehm. He's batting .333 going into today's game with 2 home runs and 8 RBIs, 4 runs scored in 5 games. Versus Miami so far this year, he's batting .444 with 6 RBIs and a home run in just 2 games. So Alec Boehm having a wonderful start to 2023. Nick Castellanos, homestand currently, .444 batting average, 4 doubles, 4 ribbies, 4 walks, 6 runs in 5 games. Phenomenal. If he can keep that up the whole season, he's going to be one of the top Phillies producers in offense. Versus Miami for 2023 here so far, batting .556, 5 for 9, 3 RBIs in 2 games. So Nick Castellanos off to a tear of a start for 2023. Great to see it. He faced so much criticism in the stands last year. I was just appalled at the amount of people that were off his bandwagon, even people that still are not on board with him. I just don't see it. Maybe I'm just a different type of fan after following the team for a few years, and I'm a little more forgiving of some players, but you know, certain people are very critical, harshly critical of certain players, and he's one of them that's gotten a bad start out here in Philadelphia. But
Who's that?
Castellanos?
Oh, well, yeah. He did get off to a bad start, Rich. You know,
you
really can't blame people for.
I mean, people were ready to throw him off.
He was a big hitter, Rich, coming into the last season. Coming into last season, big hitter, offensive player reputation. They signed him for big bucks right before the season started. He had a terrible season by anybody's evaluation last year.
People were ready to throw him off the Walt Whitman.
Yeah, I don't know if it went that far, but you know what? You know what struck me with Castellanos, Rich, was that through all of his struggles last year, and he did struggle, he even struggled mightily offensively right through the postseason, but he never let it affect his defense. And he didn't come in here with a great defensive reputation, but Bryce went down very early last year, basically missed the entire season defensively in right field. Castellanos had to step in and be the everyday right fielder, and he really was. I'm not going to say he was a Gold Glover, Rich. I'm not going to say his range is the best of all the outfielders, but he did make some phenomenal plays, and he didn't really make a lot of mistakes. He played an outstanding right field last year, and he's picked up with that this year. You know, Castellanos has shown himself to be a very good, everyday right fielder if they need him. So I'm really pleased with his defensive play, and now this year, as you mentioned, his bat seems to be coming around, and hopefully the fans will jump back on board. It seems like they want to. You saw during this homestand when he did have a couple of nice hits. He's getting a nice ovation from the fans. So obviously they need him, Rich. They need his prior production to what he showed in 2022.
They see his hustle. I got to be admittance, after last year, we struck out a lot. It was always that look at the plate that I don't like. Just strike out and walk off the plate.
He's got kind of an ornery, look about
cocky,
him.
Almost cocky. Like if you strike out, just walk away. From last year anyway. You can't change that now. But yeah, people are more on his side this year, and he's doing better. Of course, there's reason.
He's not as he's not as lovable looking. He's not like a teddy bear looking kind of guy. You know what I mean? And certain segment of the fan base, goes for that kind of, that kind of look. But
the rough edge.
And when you look, even if you aren't, when you come across as or look kind of cocky, you better back it up.
Yeah,
with your
exactly.
play, or you're going to get dumped on really fast. And he didn't back it up last year. This year, he's backing it up more, and the fans are more behind him because, the rep here in Philly. We are cocky. We do have swagger here in Philly, so we don't mind a player like that. But we want you to back it up on the
Walk the
field.
walk and talk the talk.
So far, he is this year. So we're in the. I think we're all in agreement. Most of the fans that I've seen and heard right now, we're in Nick Castellanos' corner. So hopefully he gets a turnaround, kind of like we saw from Alec Boehm last year. Just at this time last year, right? Everybody hated Alec Boehm, and then it was right about this time that he took ownership, he turned his game around, and like you said, walked the walk. And now everybody loves Alec Boehm. He's maybe the most popular Philly not named Bryce Harper.
Awesome. Well, check out Matt's writing at mattveasey.com. That's MattVeasey.com. On
More
Twitter.
importantly, at Phillies Bell on Twitter every day.
At Phillies Bell. And then you can check out my blog at fightingphillies.com. Longtime blog. We have the longest independent podcast talking about the Phillies, to my knowledge. Been around since 2006 when we first started this show.
The real Phillies Talk.
Yeah, the real one. And at Fighting Phillies on Twitter as well. Thanks for tuning in to this podcast. I'm going to try to get it out before the game because I'm going to head up. But, Matt, you have a great day, and we'll talk to everybody on the next podcast for Phillies Talk Podcast. Take care, everyone. Talk to you soon.